What are you doing August 27, 28, and 29 other than joining me and thousands of others at this year's Success Summit, the 21st year of doing it? And here's where it's all going to start. It's my prediction. I've only made 4 of them in 3 decades. My prediction is between now and the end of the year, all the way through 2027, there's going to be absolutely no change. Yes, inventory levels the same. Interest rates, if we are lucky, they'll be in the mid 6s. There's going to be no change except for the changes that you make. And if you're looking to get ahead of the curve, be a forward thinker, spend time with top agents and people that are aspiring to do even more, if you want to learn the very best listing attraction, AI tools, marketing tools, systems, and processes to build your business, and most importantly, get some time back, because this is the market for the unforeseen future that I encourage you to check out this year's Success Summit. Whether you're a first-time listener or you've been a fan of this show for a long time, first and foremost, thank you. And I'm really excited about today's guest. This gal and I have run in very similar paths and circles for a long, long time. And the reason I'm excited about bringing her onto the show today for you to really enjoy and learn from is she understands as you do. We've gone from a speed market, 2021, 2022, a little bit of 2023, to absolutely a skills and presentation market. And I can't think of anybody better to help us with that than Terri Sjodin. So Terri, for the person that maybe has never been exposed to you before, doesn't understand your backstory, they're like, well, you two run in similar paths, we did some similar things. Help them understand a little bit about your background. And then I want to talk about your research and then the mistakes that people are making when they're doing their presentations and so much more. So a little background.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Tom, for having me. It's great to see you in this more formal setting.
I know. I like it. Well, the last time we were together, we were being like the, American Idol judges, watching a bunch of presenters and giving them feedback. So yes.
Giggling off to the side. Yes. Like 12-year-olds.
So background.
Yes. So I'm very fortunate. When I was in high school, I had a high school speech coach. Yeah. His name was Jim Caforio. Yeah. And he took 3 of us from the time that we were sophomores and really helped us to be extremely competitive in speech and debate. And so because of his incredible coaching, we were way ahead of the pack. Yes. I stuck with it throughout college. I'm a full-blown speech geek. This is my thing. Yeah. And so for almost, going on 25 plus years, I have been helping people build and deliver more polished and persuasive presentations using debate strategy in a selling environment so that they can get the wins, the deals, or the opportunities that they're looking for.
That's first of all, well said. And there's so much to unpack there. The person listening right now, Terri, I don't know if this individual is read a lot, studied a lot, listened a lot to the art and science of persuasion. I don't know if they, like you and I watch infomercials and I'm not watching the, hey, but wait, there's more. I want to know how they're presenting it. I want to watch the physiology. I'm looking for, is it congruent? Is the message right? And I think for the person listening right now who is, especially today because of the new rules, if they're in the US regarding buyer agency, starting on August 17th, you can't go out and look at a house without first signing an agreement. Well, for many people with skills, that's going to be a very easy transition. Hey, Terry's anybody taking the time to show you, here's the new agreements, this is how it works. But the people that lack those skills, they're going to be in trouble. So I'm going to assume the person watching right now or listening is somewhere in between those 2 spots. So
even if they do.
Yes.
So as you know, the research is based on a multi-year 3-phase research study where we asked business and sales professionals from a variety of different industries, whether they sold a product, a service, or a cause, and we included newbies to seasoned professionals. Yes. And we asked them a very simple question. Does making a sales presentation mistake matter? And 94% of the participants said yes. And then we said, okay, great. If it matters, looking back, what are some of those things that you did? And then we asked them to put themselves in the seat of the listener. And we said, all right, if you gave us the answers of what you self-identified as a problem, that's helpful. But when you're sitting in the seat of the listener, did you noticing anything that presenter did that cost them the win or the deal or the opportunity? And the dual perspectives really help people to see themselves through a different lens. Yes. So with that, the 12 mistakes stayed the same, whether they were doing a self-confession or whether they were looking at an observation of someone else. Now, the rankings of those 12 varied depending on where they
Sure.
were in the cycle. But it was really fascinating because, people think, oh, well, if this person's a seasoned pro, they're not going to have any problems. And yet they run into problems because they become so comfortable kind of with their old shtick.
Yes.
Or they'll say, you know what, I've been doing this a long time. I can do it in my sleep.
Right.
And then they become overconfident.
Yep.
And then some young rookie who's hungry and sharp and talented kind of comes in and steals the deal right from underneath them. So all of those things relate specifically to the way that you speak and present. And the way we break it down is into 3 categories. So first, you might want to look at someone's case, the way that they build their persuasive message. Then we look at their creativity. Did they craft a message in a way that makes somebody sit up a little bit and go, oh, this one might be different? And then the third is their delivery. Did they speak in their own authentic voice? How was their eye contact, their body language, their use of humor and drama, the way they executed using, whether it be a virtual or hybrid or in-person opportunity? So all of those things come together. And then we ask people to say, okay, rank them for us. And ultimately, there were 3 mistakes out of the 12 that always rose to the top. And we can talk about those if you'd like to as well.
I want to unpack those 3, but first, you've been around the real estate industry for a long time.
Yes.
So when you think about the case, the creativity, and the delivery, what recommendations would you make, broadly for the person listening right now, if you wanted to make a better case? You want it to be a little more creative to stand out, especially now to have a degree of separation. Why me versus everybody else? And then delivery.
The first thing is always time. How much time do you have to communicate your message? And then it becomes a mathematical equation. So every great presentation has 6 components. Has an introduction. 3 main arguments or talking points, a conclusion and a close. That's 6.
Yes.
So
give it to me one more time again. So the person listening, they're in their car right now pulling over and like, I better write this down.
Right?
Okay. So 6 parts of every great presentation.
Right?
Intro,
3, body of your presentation, which typically has, 3 main talking points or arguments. They call that the magic of 3.
Yes.
People typically only remember 3 main things as a result of a persuasive message. So you want the 3 things that they remember, not the 3 random things that they might remember.
Right.
You want them to be the things you want them to focus on and remember as your differentiators.
Yes.
And then you have a conclusion, which is your wrap up. And then you have your close, which is your specific call to action. What do you want the listener to do as a result of the message?
Yes.
So if you have been given 30 minutes, you take the 6 components, you divide it into 30 minutes. Each component gets approximately 5 minutes. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, but what we're trying to do is create balance, because an imbalanced presentation really throws off the whole sequence.
Yes.
And we've all seen that happen, where somebody starts this long narrative at the beginning and they're bonding, and then all of a sudden they realize that they're running out of time and they start fast forwarding through their deck, or they're like they're trying to get to it at the end. And so that becomes counterintuitive. So first we want to manage the time. Then we ask, what is our intention? As a realtor in this industry, you have a very clear intention. You want them to work with you, you want them to work with your company, and you want them to do it now. So we want to make sure that you're persuasive rather than just informative. And this is one of the top 2 biggest mistakes. Most people self-confessed that they were overly informative rather than persuasive in their messaging. So now we've got to manage the time, because you can do the same 6 components even if that talk is only 15 minutes, or even if you have to do a 3-minute plug of a listing at an office meeting. That's still a persuasive message. 6 goes into 3 minutes. Each section gets about 30 seconds, right? That's how you work the math. So we've got the time, we've got the intention to be persuasive, and then finally, and most importantly, what do you want to happen as a result of the message? Do you want them to sign a listing agreement? Do you want them to sign a buyer agreement? Do you want them to give you a referral? Are you looking for some other transaction? I don't know what you're looking for, but what is your intention?
Yes.
And then that's the skeleton. Then we start building in your creativity, which is the soul, which brings it to life. And then, are you speaking in your own authentic voice? Because we all have our own personality and our own style. And our intention is never to change that, but rather to help people to magnify their strengths and minimize their weaknesses so that they can be authentic.
One of the many things I love about you, and the reason why I brought you in to work with all of our presenters, is you have mastered this craft in a way that there's a lot of people that are just these natural salespeople, right? Sure. Like people say like, hey, Tom, you're pretty charismatic. Like you're pretty good. I'm like, well, yes, let's see. 5.5 years of NLP training, 5 years of this, 10 years of this, hired this coach, that coach. We begin to start to package ourselves in a way that is just effective, but you've always got to be refining it. You got to, and what I loved is even just like you shared this 6-part framework when I was with you last, and I'm like, yeah, that's right. I need to get back to that. So by the way, for the person listening, you should buy this book, right? If you're watching, the book's called Presentation Ready. It's basically unpacking the 12 mistakes, the 6 different things, so they can really digest all this. And I'm going to make a crazy offer. And I did not bring this up to you, so just go with me on this.
Oh, good. Okay.
I'm going to say, if you buy a copy of this book and you email us, and I'm going to say you email us at service@tomferry.com. If you buy a book and you send us a receipt, we should take them through and do like a 30-minute workshop. Okay. They're going to buy the book. They're going to read the book. They're going to study the book. This person wants to get better. It could be 100 people. It could be 1,000 people. It could be 10 people. It doesn't make a difference, but you got to email the receipt, right, to service@tomferry.com. Okay. It's going to be from your email address. That's how we will then invite you to a little 30-minute boot camp with you to unpack it. And let's do it like maybe 30 days after this goes out, so they've had time to get the book, read the book. I think it'd just be super insightful.
Okay, for you, we will do this.
I appreciate that. Okay. So let's unpack. You started by saying, hey, it's the time, and then these 6 parts. But then you said, but the same 3 mistakes always seem to percolate up to the top. I know it's inside the book, but let's unpack for the person that maybe isn't a reader or not going to read the book. What are those 3 big mistakes, and how do we avoid them? Okay,
so before we get into what those 3 are, let's look at the big picture.
Please.
On some level, most people want to improve their presentations, but they don't know where to start.
Yes.
So the goal of Presentation Ready and the goal of the research was not to do a gotcha, and it's not to focus on mistakes.
Yes.
The goal is to help people quickly identify what they need to improve upon in order to get to the outcome that they're looking for.
Yes.
If I can help you figure out what you're doing faster, that needs to be course corrected, then it's been time well spent. It's been money well spent.
Absolutely.
So everybody wants to know the top 3. Great, Terri, tell me the 3.
Sure.
They may not be your issues. It's likely that 1 or 2 could be.
Yeah.
But in the 12, we know that the number 1 and number 2 biggest mistakes were winging it and being overly informative versus persuasive. Yes. And number 3 was concluding but not closing. Many people conclude but do not close. Now, in the 5,000 participants in the research study, most people identified 3 of the mistakes out of the 12. We did have 1 human that said they didn't make any mistakes. There's always one.
Sure.
But ultimately what was fun is that people started saying, oh, shoot, that's me. I think I'm overly informative, or I'm a concluder, I'm not a closer, or I think I can hear it getting boring. Yes. Boring was the number 1 mistake people noticed in others. And they'll hear that little voice and they'll say, I think my talk was getting boring.
Yes.
And then we'll say, well, why'd you keep going? And they'll say, well, Tara, I had to get through the material. And the question is, what's the point of getting through the material if nobody's listening to what you're saying anyway?
Yes.
And you and I have been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
The other piece of this under creativity is there's a failure to read the room. And that's really hard in virtual environments or in hybrid environments. Yes. You can get a better sense if you're in person, but when you have these other modalities, it changes. So we're looking around. Normally we would sit in their space and we would look at what was hanging on the wall or pictures that might be sitting on their desk. But in virtual, they might have a fake background or a computer-generated background. Sure. So now you've got to do your homework a little bit more ahead of time. There are so many factors that take you from good to great that are the nuances of the 12. So, initially you might look at the list and we can kind of go through some of the factors under creativity and delivery. But it makes me think back to when you and I were together and we were talking about being ticket kids.
Yeah.
Because you and I have been in sales for a long time.
Yeah.
And one thing's for sure, I have made every single one of the 12 mistakes that's in this book.
Yes. So just for context for the person listening, Terri, myself, shout out to my buddy Rick Kurtz, Brian Tracy, the guys from Hobbs and Herder, Tony Robbins. I'm trying to think of who else grew up in this same environment where literally we worked for another presenter and we would go out and we would do office meetings to basically sell tickets to these events. And it's funny to think like Tony, who I'm going to meet with next month, that Tony Robbins did that for Jim Rohn. Brian Tracy did that for Jim Rohn. I think the Hobbs and Her guys both did that for Jim Rohn.
And then Tom Hopkins, I think, right? Didn't he?
Tom Hopkins. I mean, so these are, like, I'm going to put you and them in the legendary camp. I'm just, very kind. I'm a young guy hustling, still trying to figure this thing out.
We're the puppies.
But when you've done thousands of presentations, you said something just a minute ago that I want to just call out. And it is, I believe there's two kinds of people that are presenting. There's people that are just presenting at someone, and there's someone that's having a conversation and watching how are people reacting to, like, you and I know, like, if you're presenting to 25 people, 12 people, a husband and wife trying to figure out if they want to buy or sell or move forward with you, you've got to be watching both of them and paying attention. And how do you do that and wing your presentation? Well, how do you do that and not just be talking about the two first big mistakes?
A seasoned pro has been doing this a long time, and they had a track that worked really beautifully for a long time. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it doesn't. Yes. And you're like, oh, and you feel it. You're like, oh, that used to work. Right. Now it's not working.
What happened?
And you got to tweak it. And it's just like a little dialing in can make all the difference in the world. But it takes that moment of self-reflection. Mm-hmm. So the goal of Presentation Ready is to help people look at the 12 mistakes. There are 4 under case, 4 under creativity, 4 under delivery. Yep. And then you might say, that's not me. And that's okay. Yeah. And then skip to the ones that are you. Yep. Look at the examples. Now, the examples, it plays out very differently than most books, as you know. Yep. We actually included confessions and stories of your fellow sales professionals. Mm-hmm. And they said, I did this. And then we also have what the listener or the observer felt or saw as a result of that presenter's mistake. Key. So you're getting the listener's perspective as well as the confession from the sales professional, and then we walk you through how to fix it. So it's based on having that ability to step back a little bit, look at your own presentation, ask, how can I correct some of these elements in my case? How do I course correct some of the elements of my creativity? And then I want to work on my delivery, which how do you speak in your own authentic voice, especially when you have a short period of time? And there's a beautiful quote from Winston Churchill where he suggests that if you want him to speak for 5 minutes, it's going to take him about a month to prepare. If you want him to speak for about 15 minutes, it'll take about 2 weeks to prepare. But if you want him to speak for an hour, he's ready right now. Exactly. And that's what happens. People kind of take their time and they're like, oh, I can wing it. I'm going to settle in, have my coffee. Yes. But brevity is your friend. Yeah. And learning how to self-edit is critical. Mm-hmm. And then transitioning from a beautifully self-edited presentation into a tight, wicked close that moves people towards action is really what the long-term goal is. Yeah. And the more fun you have with your talks, the more fun people have listening to them. So ultimately what I hope people will feel is inspired and excited. I'm not trying to do a gotcha book that scares people to death. No. I wanted to do something that would make people say, oh, shoot, I'm not alone. Yes. I'm not the only person who does this. Yes. And this is how I can fix it quickly. Yay.
So the person that is maybe listening, let's say he or she can see and acknowledge in themselves, hey, you know what? I've been kind of just like popping a tape in. I've done the same thing, the same presentation, this is what I do, and this is how we do it, and this is what it's about. But the rules have changed. Right? The August 17th, everything kind of shifts to this new environment where commissions are bifurcated. The buy side needs to be handled over there and the seller needs to do this. And maybe they do this and maybe they don't. There's just, it's fundamental language changes, fundamental contract changes, fundamental process changes, all requiring an awakening for every salesperson to say, how do I educate and not overeducate? How do I not talk people out of doing things because I've read every contract and I'm going to read it at you? How do I balance all of that? Like, what's your advice knowing that August 17th, literally in the US, the gloves are off? For all my friends in Canada, they've been doing this forever. For all my friends in Europe, just be happy you don't have to deal with this. What advice do you have for the person that is having that sort of anxiety right now? Like, oh, I can't just play that tape anymore and just go through what I've always done.
Well, change is always awkward, but at the end of the day, our presentations should be focused on the needs of the listener. Mm-hmm. we talked a lot about Monroe's motivated sequence when we were working with your team, that there is a 5-step process to logically persuading a listener. It begins with attention. And in that attention step, it's not about a pithy quote or having a joke or some statistic. It's about creating an awakening in the mind of the listener that inspires them to want to hear what you're about to say. The need step is critical. In the first few minutes that you're beginning your talk, people want to know, why do I need this? So I think what we have to do is make sure we're taking that content that you now need to share on August 17th and morph it into that need step so it becomes a very natural, easy part of your sales process. The third step is satisfaction. In the satisfaction step, that's where you prove that you can meet the needs that you've laid out in that second step. It's your evidence, it's your credibility, it's your return on investment. It's the social proof that supports what you've identified in the needs step. Then we transition into visualization and then your action step, which, as you know, is a much bigger topic for a different day. But I think it floats beautifully if you use Monroe's motivated sequence to manage the content. It can still be compelling without being boring. And it actually could be an asset rather than a liability if you spin it properly.
And I think that it's interesting as you like reminding me of this, and this is in all my Terri Sjodin notes on my laptop that I was reviewing before I got here, is there's just something different when you actually take the time to build a presentation around what are the problems that these people are facing, and not the problems that you think. Like, when was the last time you actually took the time to send an email out or a Survey Monkey to ask your customers, when you were thinking about selling, what were some of the concerns you had? What were some of the things you were thinking about? Because a lot of people think it's only about, like, can I get the highest possible price and how fast can you do it? And what fee are you going to charge me? But when you actually look at the data, a lot of people are thinking about, how do I time this? How do I time this right? And what do I need to do to prepare my home? And am I going to spend too much money? Am I going to spend not enough money? Like, it's a lot of that stuff that if we just took the time to survey more, ask more questions, even if it's on like Instagram and a poll, if you were to sell, what do you think are some of the things you might be thinking about in order to get ready? And then start to build your story around the actual problems people are facing today. One of the big problems is, I could sell my house today for top dollar, but where am I going to move? There's no homes for sale, right? So how do we take that and put it into the attention? How do we put it into the need? And then satisfaction, the proof that you've been able to help tens or 20s or hundreds or whatever the number is, people in the past. You start to use that framework to build out the story.
And I love that you just said, what were people saying in the past? Because what we know to be true is that the most compelling arguments that people used in the past are not the things that are moving people forward in today's market.
Yes.
And when we worked with your team, they said, well, these are the things we've always said.
Yes.
And I would be like, those are beautiful things.
Yes.
But those are not the things that are keeping people up at night now.
Exactly.
So how do we change that narrative to structure our talks, to structure our persuasive case in a way that really hones in on, wow, so that the listeners thinks, that's what I needed. Or better yet, oh my gosh, that's everything I never knew I always needed.
Right.
That's how you create awakening.
Right.
And then you get the goosebumps, right? People are like, oh my gosh, and it's tighter. And so it's not, and these are not generic things. And we're coming at it in a 20-minute podcast.
Yes. Read this book. Very important. Okay.
But when you want to level up,
it's
right. I try to make it as quick and easy as possible for that.
It's a thin book, which I always appreciate.
Tight. And it gets to the point.
So let's transition, because I want to talk about, I think one of the big problems people have is conclusion and not closing. So what insights do you have? And I was referring, kind of looking at my notes of like the 6 reasons why people take action. Would you shed some light on that, or other insights around for the person listening? Like, I have a tendency to kind of go, so what do you think? Like, I've showed you all my stuff. This is what I do. What do you think? Like, that's not a close.
No.
So would you shed some light on why people buy? What are those 6 things that you shared with us, and maybe share it with the listener to help them? I know.
In 2 minutes.
Yes. In 10 minutes.
What I would love to do is get people to think about, what does it feel like when you are going through your presentation and you're getting towards the end?
Yes.
And if you've built a nice, clean case, it will feel balanced. Closing is a natural part of the transaction.
Yes.
It shouldn't feel like this big, heavy, clunky thing.
No.
But there's an awkwardness if you haven't built a solid case. And so what happens is there's a pressure and people feel the anxiety that comes with it. And so they'll get to the end and they're like, they just skip closing altogether.
Right.
What's interesting is that the narrative is, I don't want to be hard sell. But what the data shows is that people aren't closing at all.
Exactly.
So in the
somewhere between, I don't want to be a hard sell, but you never ask them to take action.
Correct.
Like somewhere in between, we have to find a safe
over.
space. Yeah.
And they'll say, so what I hope people will start to feel is this awakening of, wow, there are these little things I'm doing that if I course correct,
Yes.
what's a nice, smooth way to move forward and ask people to take action without it feeling heavy and daunting.
Right.
So I'll ask people, how do you close? And they'll say, oh, I'll just ask them. And then we watch the video or the playbacks, and the number one close is, so do you have any questions?
Which is up there with, so what do you think? Right. That's not a close.
No. Because if you say, if I say, do you have any questions? What's the normal answer?
No, I pretty much got it. Or worse, yes, I have more questions that you didn't answer.
Perfect.
Yes.
And then what happens, and this is really normal, and I'm not trying to beat up on anybody.
No, I love it.
But the natural next thing that will come out of a sales professional's mouth, especially if they're in that newbie or in that flatliner stage, they'll say, okay, great. Well, if you have any questions, then call me.
Yeah.
Call me is not a close.
No.
So what is a close? A close is the specific call to action, what you want them to do as a result of the message, and it is paired with what you are going to do to move the transaction forward. Now, before you get there, as you know, we have to get through this visualization step, which is the step that's most left out of most professional persuasive presentations. The visualization step is the piece after you've presented your case where the listener can see the future.
Yes.
They see themselves either in that home or moving to the new location and working with you in that process, working with your team, working with your office, and it feels good. If I can look ahead and where you're taking me feels better than where I am today, there's a higher probability that I'm going to move forward as a result when you get to that close or asking period or that action step. So you can't just take the close alone.
No.
It has to be paired with the visualization step so that people feel good about it. And that's where you get that marriage.
So I think we both know, like, most people make that mistake. And I'm sure the person watching right now, if they were to make a comment on YouTube or wherever, they're, oh God, I've been guilty of that one. So what do you guys think? Do you have any questions? Is there a recommended close? Is there something you found to be simple, easy, first principle, effective? And if so, what is it?
First rule.
Yeah.
Don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
What I can share what I do.
Please.
I'll just say, would you like to move forward?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
One of two things is going to happen.
Yes.
They're going to say, well, and then there's that pause.
Yeah.
And then it'll tell me what the issue
condition,
is.
Whatever it may be. Yep.
If I can surface what the challenge or the pushback is, I can deal with it.
Yes.
But trying to manage the vagueness of I'd like to think about it is way too complicated.
Yes.
So it's just a simple question and it's not scary.
Yeah.
I think everyone can, everyone, as you're driving in your car, you're sitting at home, just practicing, would you like to move forward?
Yeah. Would you like to move forward? Or like, are you guys ready to move forward? You guys ready to get started? Right?
Well, they might not be ready.
Yeah. So would you like to move forward?
Would you like to move forward?
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at you. You're smiling.
I do. I love it. I was like, yes, I do. I do. I'd like to read your book and rehire you again. And
would you like to buy a copy of Presentation Ready?
I would like to move forward. Yes.
And some people say, but Terri, this is great, but I don't read.
Yeah.
So they can get the audiobook and I will read the book to them.
Yes.
It makes it so nice.
I love it.
Or if you'd like to watch it, you can just go onto LinkedIn and I have the course on LinkedIn Learning.
Okay, will you talk about, because this is the hard part. Like we were both like, okay, we're racing. We got 30 minutes. I want to get you on the show. You know how much I love you. I want everybody to buy this book, but I'm like, we only have 30 minutes.
Yes.
Tell them about the LinkedIn show.
So the 12 mistakes, I have a course on LinkedIn Learning. So if you have a LinkedIn account, which I'm sure almost everyone does, LinkedIn has their LinkedIn Learning platform, which is where you can go to get a whole host of training and development courses.
Yes.
If you are premium, my course is free. So you just go to LinkedIn Learning, type in Terri Sjodin presentation skills or persuasive presentation skills, and poof, it'll pop up under sales skills, 12 most common mistakes. It's a 34-minute course.
Yes.
It walks you very quickly through each of the 12 mistakes, because you can imagine 12 mistakes, 30 minutes. Each mistake is only about 3 minutes in total.
Yes.
But you'll get a clear identification of what the mistake is, how it's defined. You'll see an actor kind of, imagine you're in The Office. Remember the television show The Office, where a person would go into a confessional and they would confess a specific mistake.
Yes.
And then it would cut to the person on the other end of the conversation. It's the same thing. You get a confession from a sales professional and the opinions or the feedback from the observer. Then it cuts back to me. I give them a quick little solution step, and it is a lovely starter course.
Yes.
So if you're looking for something you can watch in 34 minutes in your office, pop onto LinkedIn Learning. You can friend me on LinkedIn. You can get our newsletter. You can pick up the book, listen to the audio. We're going to hopefully do more things together.
Would you like to move forward? Really fast though. For years, I was taught to make sure that also your physiology was in alignment with your language. So it's not, would you like to move forward? It's, would you like to move forward? And it doesn't need to be like, would you like to move forward? But just, would you like to move forward?
I think your head naturally does it.
No, most people, it's so funny because when I would ask people to like, okay, turn to your neighbor. One of you is A, one of you is B. And I used to do when I got a 5-day sales training course, lots of scripts and dialogues. And I would say, okay, just go ahead and do your close. And it was hysterical to watch the room. The person that was typically closing, whatever that was like, are you guys ready to move forward? Like their head would be a no. All the time, to the point that I was literally like, hey, everybody, I want you to do this. And I would make it exaggerated and then say, please don't do that when you're in front of a client. But I need to get you in the habit of like, would you like to move forward?
Okay.
Just a little subtle, like just a little subtle head nod the right way versus this sends signals of no.
And we talked about this when we were together. Some people will want to work with you and partner with you because of your ethos, some because of pathos, some because of logos. We know you're a logos guy, which is why this particular section in our podcast is very logos case based. But some of your listeners are going to be ethos and some will be pathos. And there are many, many elements in the other 12 mistakes that we did not get into today because you are logos dominant. And all of that is okay. You can be more pathos or heart-centric. You can be more ethos, which is credibility-centric. You can be logos, which is logic, building your persuasive case-centric. All are good. We all have a dominant, and we all are a little bit of all three. But you pair those 3 elements along with the 12 mistakes, and you're going to be able to fix things very quickly.
And that's the key.
Yep. The key is to be able to identify what the challenge is. And that's the pushback I got from the beginning of this book. Terri, why are you focusing on the mistakes? Because you cannot course correct what you don't recognize as a problem.
Yeah. And I have always been a fan of, I think we learn more from our mistakes than we do from our successes. Like, like the great Phil Jackson, I was interviewing him. He's like, when you guys won, like, I forget the number, it was like 17 or 27, some incredible number of games in a row. He goes, I didn't like it. Because it was really hard to coach the team because we just kept winning. But when we lost, then we could look back at the film and say, okay, what do we need to do better? So I actually really appreciate the 12 mistakes.
I think you're right. I think there's something about that X factor in all those wins that becomes very challenging. And we spent a lot of time trying to identify what that X factor is with your group because you have such a talented, super wicked smart group of people on your team. And what happens is the more you dig into the 12, the meatier the conversation gets, which is what's really fun. People think, oh, it's pretty basic then, it's for beginners. And I'm like, oh no, it'll light you up if you're in the right crew. For sure. Because it pushes you. And iron sharpens iron. We talk about it all the time. But the fundamentals start here, but really they grow to an exponentially as soon as you dig in.
So we unpacked a lot.
Yes.
I'm going to strongly recommend they buy the book. I think I've now said that 6 times. Are you ready to move forward? Right? I love that.
Amazon, Barnes & Noble,
wherever you want to buy it.
Wherever your books are sold.
But I would love for the person listening, if you buy the book, send us an email, service@tomferry.com with a receipt. And again, whether it's 10 or 10,000, doesn't make a difference. We're gonna do a little 30-minute deep dive 30 days after this goes live, giving them time to maybe go on LinkedIn, watch the course, whatever, buy the book, do what all they got to do. Terri, if somebody wanted to follow you, connect with you, LinkedIn is certainly where I find you the most. Is there any other spot that I should be looking at if I'm looking online?
No, I'm a B2B girl. Yeah. I'm business to business. I'm 110% on LinkedIn. Yeah. But you can get the book on Amazon. You can get all the modalities.
Yes.
CD, audiobook, Audible. Yeah. Pick your poison.
Audio,
that's
cassette,
the easiest.
Record, 8-track. You got it.
We still have CDs in libraries.
I know. I love it.
So I would encourage people to just read it cover to cover.
Yes.
And then think about, what are the mistakes I make? And in the back, there's a very simple self-evaluation form that you can use to identify the areas that you want to fix. Yep. Then you can also use it when you're with your team, and then you're all on the same page. And all of a sudden you'll say, oh no, I was overly informative, or oh shoot, I didn't create connection, or oh my gosh, I used too many industry acronyms, or I was saying or like, or there are all kinds of filler words and things that people do that are focused a little bit more in that delivery space, which we didn't have a chance to get into today. But I think that at the end of the day, Charles Kingsley said it best. He said that we often think that it's comfort and luxury that are the chief requirements for happiness in life, when all we truly need to be happy is something to be enthusiastic about. And I hope I can help people to get just a little bit more enthusiastic about their next sales presentation and adapting to all of these new changes, making them an asset rather than a liability.
Love you. Love that. That's a mic drop. All right. So for my friend listening, leave us a comment. Let me know what you think. Definitely follow her on LinkedIn. Check out her program on LinkedIn. Absolutely check out the book. I know I've said it 7 times, but I mean it. The reason why I hired her to work with all my presenters, and I'm trying to get you that same insight. So thank you, Terri. I know you got to run and I got to run. Keep watching, keep listening, keep getting better. Can't wait for you to be on the next show with us. See you soon.